So we shall now go on to our next segment, Pearls from Me, and it has Dr. Manisha Agrawal, Head of the Retina Services, Shrav Charity Eye Hospital, Delhi, and she is going to tell us not to forget the masquerades. And her discussant is going to be Dr. Praveen Sen. On to you, Dr. Manisha.
Thank you so much, ma'am. So is my screen visible?
Yeah. Yes, madam. Please go.
So very good evening to all of you. And I thank Dr. Chitra and Dr. Srinivas for giving me this opportunity. And I would be presenting this lady who was a learning experience for me and my colleagues in my clinic, a 45-year-old female patient with diminution of vision in both eyes for last 4 months with no history of any kind of systemic illness. She had been diagnosed elsewhere with VKH and was being treated with steroids and also had been treated with 3 doses of IVMP, followed by immunosuppressants in the form of methotrexate, and then subsequently with azathioprine. She was, however, still not responding and she was worsening, and that's the time when she sought a second opinion at our hospital. There was no relevant past systemic history that was given by the patient. Now here we have, this is the fundus picture of the right eye, and I would like to draw your attention. She had exudative retinal detachment because we could not really locate any kind of retinal break. She did show a hyperemic disc in this eye, and you see these very taut subretinal gliotic bands, which were like ropey structures in the subretinal space. And in the left eye, again, you see a similar kind of a picture where you had this thick band going through the macular area, a hyperemic disc, exudative retinal detachment, and somewhere we could see a kind of a yellowish glow underlying the detachment in this eye. When we did an OCT, the patient had subretinal fluid. We could actually appreciate a structure resembling a pigment epithelial detachment, and we could appreciate this high reflective band, which was suggestive of the subretinal gliotic band. Of course, the choroidal layer was a little bumpy, but we somehow ignored it at this point of time. And we saw this hyperreflective material in the subretinal space, which we actually, diagnosed it as a subretinal fibrinous kind of a deposit in this particular eye. A similar kind of picture again in the left eye, where you had pockets of subretinal fluid, again hyperreflective material in the subretinal space. And this is how the left eye OCT was. We went ahead and did a fundus fluorescein angiography, and you did have a diffuse kind of a leakage throughout the entire fundus. And you did have some element of a hot disk in the later frames. A similar kind of picture in the left eye also. However, the hot disk was more prominent in the left eye in the later frames. We did have this, a kind of a very patchy kind of a hyperfluorescence, which could be seen in both the eyes. Now, what went really strongly against a diagnosis of VKH was that there was absolutely no response in this patient to steroids, including IVMP and immunosuppressants. And that is something we held very strongly against a diagnosis of an inflammatory pathology in this young patient. So when we went back to the patient and took a more detailed history, there was a history of alopecia, and she was on treatment with minoxidil for a year. And therefore, we landed up diagnosing this patient with chronic CSR and putting together all her OCT and FFA pictures. And we gave her a trial of eplerenone, and we reviewed her 2 weeks later. So there was no improvement noted. She was only symptomatically better. There were no changes on the OCT findings. And so we reassessed the OCT once again. And now what drew our attention was this bumpy nature of the choroidal layer that we could see in both her eye OCT pictures. So this is what really drew our attention. And when we went back again to the patient, we took again a detailed history, and she came up with a history of a small nodule in the right breast 2 years back, which apparently was diagnosed to be benign. So an honest confession, we wanted some more time to tax our head. So we said, okay, let's refer you back, go back and get a reevaluation done of the breast lump that was diagnosed 2 years back. And to our utter surprise and shock, when she was examined by the oncologist, she had very prominent lumps in both the breasts, and also there was a matted right axillary node. The opposite breast and axilla, of course, on a physical examination was normal, And the patient was apparently advised various kind of investigations, obviously to know what other things that the patient was undergoing. So the mammogram was done of the bilateral breast, and the patient apparently did have an evidence of malignancy even in the opposite left breast. A PET scan was done, and apparently she had mets all over the body, right, involving her thyroid, lungs, skeletal, omental, adrenal, and adnexal lesions. They all were detected on the PET scan. Apparently, the histopathology of the biopsy that was done of the left breast, there was evidence of invasive ductal carcinoma in both the breasts, and they were of grade 3. An ultrasound guided FNAC of the right axillary lymph node was also done, which came out to be positive for cancer cells, which was suggestive again of carcinoma. So an MRI brain and spine was done, which again showed an extensive involvement. So a diagnosis of metastatic carcinoma of the right breast with leptomeningeal metastasis was done. Both eye choroidal metastasis and both metastasis was there. The primary site of tumor, of course, was the right breast, and histopathology did confirm the presence of an invasive ductal carcinoma. The patient apparently was put on hormonal therapy along with radiation and chemotherapy. And because the patient was hardly ambulatory with the extensive exudative detachment in both the eyes, we decided to do an external drainage. I'll just take a few seconds. And however, external drainage, it apparently failed because the subretinal fluid was very thick and viscous. So we finally converted to a pars plana vitrectomy with silicone oil injection in both the eyes. So this is how the picture looks 2 weeks post-op, where in the left eye, the patient has a vision of 624 and N12. And this is the left eye OCT. And this is the right eye, which we operated later on. She has a vision of 660 N36, which made the patient ambulatory again. And this is the OCT picture where the macula is still off because of the thick SRG band, which is running through the macular area. So the clinical points to learn from this case is that the patient, if it's not responding to a treatment, it's probably the best time to revise your diagnosis and restart by taking a detailed history, run through all the investigations again, or take another opinion. We may always have something underlying which may be fatal if not detected on time. And why and how to suspect a masquerade? Probably if you're dealing with extremes of age, which apparently didn't apply to this particular patient, an unusual clinical presentation, but the most important being that when the patient is not responding to your usual standard of care. So thank you once again. And over to you, Parveen.
Manisha madam, thank you so much. It was really a wonderful case. Before Parveen madam just picks up, I just wanted to ask you, was anti-VEGF given in these cases when the metastasis was diagnosed as, since it's an exudative RD, and the reason for doing vitrectomy, was it the SRG band?
So apparently, it was not really the SRG band, because if you see, I really didn't do any active intervention to remove those bands because they were very thickly adherent to the underlying layers. And I was scared that if I tried removing them, they may actually tear the retina. So I did a very conservative surgery. The aim was basically to get the field of vision back for this patient. And the patient apparently was totally non-ambulatory with the extensive exudative RDs that she had in both the eyes. So that was my main reason for doing, I wanted to just do an external drainage. Believe me, I didn't want to go inside the eye. But the fluid was so thick that, I apparently failed to do an external drainage. Maybe we can have some more tips from MPS sir and all who do it more frequently. So that was my basic reason.
Thank you, madam. Over to Parveen madam.
So thank you, Manisha, for really sharing a very nice case. And it's a learning lesson for all of us, because I think management of exudative retinal detachment is very challenging and it can throw up a lot of masquerades. Only 1 or 2 points which probably I thought I could learn from your case is that, multimodal imaging before we start treatment, especially when we are doing exudative retinal detachment, and not just depend on one investigation. And I believe in ultrasound in almost all cases of exudative RD, especially when it is as extensive as this, and you can see some yellowish alteration under the retina, probably would have added to the diagnosis a little early on, because you would have picked up that lumpy bumpy thickening of choroid, which is not usually very often seen in a CSE. Another thing which I couldn't help noticing is that patient was on minoxidil for alopecia, but nobody, the awareness for that was there, but no awareness for examination or follow-up for the breast lump. So, which is again a very paradoxical thing of our society, that we are only looking at external appearances and not really looking at the gravity of the situation, which needed to be more closely followed than alopecia. And definitely, I would like Dr. MPS comment on this also, because he's here with us and this is largely his specialty also. Dr. MPS, sir, please for your comment.
Mahesh sir, are you there?
I'm here, Dr. Srinivas.
Sir, it's a public demand for you.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, it was a very interesting case, like Dr. Manisha has shown. What was atypical was there was no mass lesion as such to show that like it was a metastasis. It was an irregular bumpiness of the choroid. So one of the differential diagnoses which I would have entertained would have been a lymphoma as well because of the choroidal elevation. So that was one thing. And like Manisha very rightly said, something atypical, yes, we should think of something else. And she asked me about like subretinal fluid drainage. What I would do is to probably put an infusion cannula, but then still not go ahead and do a vitrectomy. Use a 26 gauge needle transclerally and probably use an active suction to drain the subretinal fluid and send it for analysis. That's what I would have done. Intravitreal, yes, if the patient does not respond to the systemic chemotherapy or radiation, I do use intravitreal chemotherapy along with anti-VEGF, like you mentioned anti-VEGF. So I have treated a couple of CA breast patients with intravitreal anti-VEGF as well as carboplatin or methotrexate. So one of these agents I have tried to see if that helps as well. Is there anything else any of you want to know?
So can I just add one more thing that actually the first investigation, Parveen ma'am, what we did was an ultrasound in this patient. But apparently the exudative RD was so much that it was literally touching the back of the lens in this particular patient. And probably we really could not appreciate any kind of, choroidal bumps, as MPS sir said, even on doing an ultrasound. So that was the last on our diagnosis, apparently, even on doing an ultrasound. I really don't know that, why we are not really able to pick up such an extensive involvement of the choroid even on an ultrasound. So I wanted to ask MPS, sir, do we really, sir, even with such extensive meds, never appreciate these choroidal bumps on an ultrasound?
Yes, it is possible because it is just about the infiltration in the early stages that like the choroidal lumpiness may not be seen. So I had a patient who presented actually with scleritis and actually serious choroidal detachment. And after quite some time is when the choroid starts showing up as well. So in initial phases, it may not be it may not be very obvious. It could be just an infiltration which subsequently shows up as the disease evolves.
Thank you. I think paucity of time, we need to go on to our next speaker.
If I may, can I make a comment, please?
Yes.
Yeah, quick, madam.
Manisha, yeah, the needle aspiration is a tried method, especially if your exudative RD is so high. A needle aspiration is a good method to withdraw fluid and send it for evaluation. And the one question which I wanted to ask you was that means the early diagnosis of a benign breast lump in this patient was not correct, right?
Yes. No, probably it was initially benign and then probably it got converted into a malignancy because 2 years she was absolutely asymptomatic. So I really don't know. This is the first time
all
I
these
saw.
cases.
Sorry, ma'am?
Maybe 2 years it took to spread to all these areas
Yes.
that she had.
Yes, probably.